WWE TLC 2019 is live this Sunday from the Target Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The non-existent promotion for this pay-per-view was quite noticeable up until about, 4 days ago? 4 or 5 days ago on Monday Night Raw, when all of a sudden they remembered, hey, we have a pay-per-view. We should probably start announcing matches for it. So we started to actually get a match card that was made official, but yet, Even now, I expect that after I'm done recording this in the next day or two, right up until the day of the event, they'll likely add another 1 or 2 matches. We still don't know what the kickoff match is going to be. I'm sure they're going to add more. And this is something else here, because there are pay-per-views where they don't announce, a full card necessarily that far in advance, but we've had almost nothing announced officially in the up until the last 10 days or so. So it doesn't seem like there was a whole lot of effort put into this, but now we have a full card. Sometimes when we have pay-per-views like this, where there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of forethought put into it, and people go into these shows sometimes with lowered expectations, those are the shows that tend to over-deliver. So we may end up with a hell of a pay-per-view on Sunday, because they've got some strong matches here on paper. Now, one match that was not officially added tonight during the Smackdown show, and I thought it might be, they did not officially, as of this recording, announce a women's championship match for the Smackdown side, with Bayley defending against Lacey Evans, maybe even wrestling Lacey in some kind of non-title match, maybe Sasha against Lacey. That's the sort of match I could see being announced after the fact, but that was not, in fact, announced for this show. What we do know, though, is that the Viking Raiders are going to be defending their Raw Tag Team titles in an open challenge. The Viking Raiders have no competition whatsoever on Monday Night Raw. And so they've issued this open challenge for their championships. They've already beaten the Street Profits. We got that match out of nowhere on Monday night. Not only did they beat the Street Profits, although fun as it was for the 3 minutes it lasted, they beat them rather handily. And the Street Profits were so disappointed and were so upset at losing this tag team match against the Viking Raiders on Monday night that they went and did comedy. And you would never know that they lost this big match against the Raw Tag Team Champions earlier in the card. They did this mock Weekend Update SNL skit later in the show. It was all laughs for the Street Profits. So they were vanquished on Monday night. Anderson and Gallows, for them to come out and answer the challenge would be a letdown. AOP is getting the big push right now. Right now that they're aligned with Seth Rollins, Shield 2.0. My prediction is that they answer the challenge and they walk away the new Raw Tag Team Champions. My question, though, would be very simple. Why? What do they need the titles for? What do they need the titles for? Just to stand around with them? I don't see the point in putting the titles on them yet. You can wait a little while. Here's another option. The Usos. They're on the Raw roster. We haven't seen them in months. Not since Jimmy's last traffic violation. Maybe the Usos show up as a surprise to answer the open challenge on Sunday. So that's just another idea, just to think about. But I'm going to stick with AOP. How about this? If it is AOP, they walk away the new Raw Tag Team Champions. If it's the Usos, they lose and the Viking Raiders retain. But I'm picking AOP as the realistic option here. Buddy Murphy, speaking of picking options, he's going to pick a fight with Aleister Black, who looked impressive in his win over Akira Tozawa on Raw last Monday. They've been, feeding opponents to Buddy Murphy as well. I think it was Zack Ryder last week. There's been a lot of these kind of jobber matches on Raw the last few weeks. And again, I said this on the podcast last Sunday. There's nothing inherently wrong with having these enhancement matches to get some of these new guys over and let them get their finisher and their moves over. There's just been so many of them. And we've seen so many of them on that show back to back to back. They've got to break that up a little bit. So they've done a pretty decent job of, giving Murphy some wins. And obviously Black, I believe, remains undefeated on Raw. And now he's going to meet Murphy in the biggest match he's had probably since the match he had with Cesaro, which feels like eons ago. I think these two, if you give these two guys a solid 10 to 12 minutes in the ring on Sunday, these guys will knock it out of the park. Buddy Murphy is very, very good. We got to see that on Smackdown when he was getting a little mini push there for a while. He had a match with Roman Reigns. Took Roman to the limit. Had a match with Daniel Bryan. Not to mention all the matches he had on 205 Live and all the matches with Mustafa Ali. So we know what Buddy Murphy can do. And Aleister Black is very good as well. So I expect good things out of these two. And I expect an Aleister Black win on Sunday. I don't think there's any doubt about that. We've got the New Day defending their SmackDown Tag Team titles in a ladder match, which was a late stipulation added here to this match, like most things on this card, against The Revival, who apparently are replacing Dolph Ziggler and Bobby Roode after Roode was popped for a wellness violation. I guess we now know why he did that stretcher job on TV a few weeks ago. It was announced this week that Bobby Roode and Primo Colon have each been suspended for 30 days without pay for their first violation of the WWE wellness policy. I did not even realize the Colones were still employed. I did not realize they were still drawing a paycheck from WWE. I thought they had quietly left many months ago and they were just wrestling exclusively in Puerto Rico. Apparently they are wrestling in Puerto Rico, but apparently they're still under contract as well to WWE. I also did not realize, and I noticed this little note in the Observer this week, that before this week, it had been 3 years since WWE last reported any wellness violations publicly, which they're supposed to. 3 years, which I guess means that everybody's been clean for 3 years. See? The wellness policy works. Yeah, that's not suspicious at all. I cannot imagine that the Revival end up with the titles when they were not even supposed to be in this match in the first place. So I'm picking the New Day to retain. And by the way, I'm recording this shortly after SmackDown has gone off the air. And I would be remiss if I did not mention the Botchamania moment with Dash Wilder as he was making his entrance. The Revival came out for what was actually a pretty good match against Chad Gable and Mustafa Ali. And I don't know what Wilder was doing. I don't know what he was thinking. Obviously, he wasn't. As the Revival are coming out, Dawson comes out. Behind him is Wilder, who has his back turned. He's walking backwards as he makes his entrance. Well, what he did not realize is that part of the new SmackDown set was sort of protruding out into his path, and he tripped and fell. He tripped and fell on his ass. Now, to his credit, he played it off very nicely as he could. Tried to pretend like he meant to do that. So it wasn't seamless, but he made the most of a very embarrassing situation. But I'm watching this guy, and I'm like, who makes an entrance like that? He looked like most people that I know leaving the bar at the end of the night. And they fall on their ass too. So that was Dash Wilder here. They're not winning the titles on Sunday. And not after this. We have Rusev taking on Bob Lashley in a tables match after Rusev put Lashley through a table during the divorce court segment on Monday with Rusev and Lana. This divorce court segment, we had Jerry Lawler out in the ring on Monday night. He was going to moderate, what an appropriate party to moderate a divorce segment. There's Jerry Lawler in the ring, and out came Lana with her attorney. She was lifting the distance provision of the order of protection against Rusev so that they can be in the same ring together to share their divorce papers. Rusev comes out wearing a blazer over a Donald Duck face t-shirt. He looked like the happiest man in the world. He looked like he could go to Disneyland. He was the happiest guy in the world. He could not wait to sign these divorce papers fast enough. Until, of course, Lana threatened to take their little doggy. And that's where Rusev drew the line, and they started arguing back and forth, and it became unbearable. Just cut the dog in half. Problem solved. So Lana finally signed. But before Rusev would sign, he said, "I want one thing from you." And she thought he wanted sex. Which, I mean, if she's offering. What do you want? You want sex? You want to have sex in the closet? You want to have sex in the ring? You want to have sex in the rafters? You want to have sex in some of the empty bleachers at Dynamite? Where do you want to have sex? Rusev said no, he didn't want sex. What he wanted was a match with her boyfriend, Bob Lashley. So Lashley comes out. He said he was going to ask Lana to marry him once the divorce was final, proving some men never learn. So then, of course, they brawled, and that's when Rusev put him through the table, which now leads to this tables match. I'm picking Lashley to win here. Rusev had his moment on Monday night. He put Lashley through the table. He got a nice big pop, a nice reaction from the crowd. I'm sure this is not the end. Yes, the divorce papers have been signed in storyline. I'm sure this is not the end of this dumb story. And I think Lashley is going to pick up the win. I don't think it's quite time yet in this story for Rusev to have his moments. They're going to want to drag this out even longer. So I'm picking Lashley to pick up the win. Now, let me just say this. Lana, I don't know if she did an interview with a radio station or who she was talking to. And I take her at face value when she talks about this. She is a heel. You never know if she's in character or not. But I assume she's telling the truth and being honest about this, which is that she has received, she claims, death threats from fans over the storyline with Bobby Lashley. And she claimed that even the FBI has gotten involved and has been in touch with WWE about these death threats. Now, the reason I think she's telling the truth here, and this is not just part of her, playing up her character or being a heel, is because Lashley said the same thing in a serious way in an interview back at the end of October. He made a similar claim that he, too, had received some death threats and some really nasty comments. He didn't want to repeat what they were, but you can pretty much figure what they were. And I hear this. I hear what Lashley said. I hear what Lana said here about getting death threats over this stupid storyline. And all I can think is, are people really still that bothered by this idea of a white woman being with a black dude, that they would lob death threats at these people, who of course are only playing a role on TV. We're not even talking real life situation here, at least not yet. We all know how these wrestling storylines can, sometimes art imitates life. I hope Rusev's got eyes in the back of his head. I hope he knows what he's doing. But really? Is this really what's going on here? I mean, holy shit. Get over yourselves. I'll speak for myself, and I will forever be grateful to have had parents that raised me to like whoever the hell I want to like, regardless of what she looks like. Some people, I swear to God, some people just walk around brain dead. That they would send death threats to these people over a storyline. That's the scary part. These people walk among us. They are brain dead and they walk among us. So, I thought that was really stupid. She shouldn't have to put up with that shit, neither should Lashley. And hopefully, if the FBI is involved, hopefully they'll crack down on this shit, because this just should not be happening. The Kabuki Warriors defend their women's tag team titles against Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch, or Becky Lunch, as I just wrote down here, which tells you where my head is at. 10:30 at night, and I'm ready for lunch. Hungry as hell. This is a tables, ladders, and chairs match. Now, a couple of weeks ago, the tag team champions beat Charlotte Flair in a handicap match on Monday Night Raw. A handicap match that was way better than I expected it to be. That turned out to be a really good match, despite the fact that it took almost 20 minutes for the tag team champions to beat one person. So what did they do? They repeated the same formula again this week. Because when something works, let's beat it to death. So they did it again this week. Only this time it was Becky Lynch, or Becky Lunch. And of course the match was not nearly as good. a copy of a copy is usually not as good as the original. So we had a chair shot from Asuka. That led to a DQ win for Becky. After the match was over, they had Becky laid out on a table outside the ring. Kairi Sane comes off the top rope with an insane elbow down through Becky Lynch on the table. Pretty cool spot, even though, a few minutes later, didn't really seem to have any impact on Becky at all. There she was, sitting in the back. No big deal. No big thing. Which I guess you could say Kairi Sane is what? What is she? Probably 80 pounds soaking wet? But still, this woman's coming off the top rope. Giant, one of the best elbows, if not the best elbow drop in the business. I don't care how tiny she is. It's always a beautiful thing to see Kairi Sane soaring through the air for an elbow, let alone down through a table outside the ring. They should have saved that for the pay-per-view. But apparently Becky is fine. But that was a cool spot. But here's the thing. So how did we get to this being a tag team title? Obviously, it was not a giant leap. You could see, Stevie Wonder could see where this was going. But how did this become a championship match, you might ask? By Asuka and Kairi Sane, the tag team champions, challenging Charlotte and Becky to a title match. The Kabuki Warriors are the champions. People should be challenging them. Instead, they challenged the challengers. They challenged Charlotte and Becky. They said, I forgot exactly what Asuka, I forgot her exact words. It was in this random backstage segment where the interview lady goes up to them to talk to them. And Asuka says, we challenge you to a championship match. What kind of ass-backwards booking is that? Why is the champion challenging the challengers? Anyway, so now we have this tag team title match. Prediction, I hate to say it, because I like what they're doing with Asuka and Kairi. I like the TV time they're getting, the green mist. I like it all. But I can't shake this feeling that they're going to change the titles. I think we're going to get Charlotte and Becky as the new women's tag team champions. Now, I don't think their reign is going to be very long. In fact, they could lose it as early as Raw the next night. So I don't think they're in for a long reign, but I'm going to... I don't know if I'm going off on a limb here or not, but I'm picking them to win the belts. Let's be honest. It's Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair. Is it really that much of a leap to think that WWE would put gold on them? I mean, come on. So I'm going to pick them to win. Then we have the Universal Champion, Bray Wyatt, going one-on-one in a non-title match against The Miz. I have really been digging the build to this match. And I thought what they did tonight on Smackdown was great. With Renee Young interviewing Miz from his new home that he just moved into this week. I saw Miz was on The Bump, which I swore I would never watch again, but I saw John Morrison made his WWE re-debut on The Bump. Yes, they did not save it for a surprise cameo in the Royal Rumble. They did not save it for some Raw appearance or SmackDown appearance. We don't even know what brand he's going to be on. John Morrison came back on The Bump, and if you don't know what The Bump is, better left unsaid. But I watched The Bump with John Morrison. They had him in studio with Kayla Braxton and the other goofballs there in the studio that they have. And he was there for the whole hour, and they were basically just interviewing him, and they were openly talking about his time in Impact and Lucha Underground and, some of these other promotions that he's been, working with in the years since leaving WWE. But they had a couple of surprises for him via satellite, so they had a very nice message from Al Snow, who was his original trainer from the Tough Enough days. And then they had The Miz, who was sitting in his home, and he said, I just moved into this house 2 days ago. And we had a lot of stories being told by Miz and Morrison about their days coming up together as a tag team, and the dirt sheet days. And there was a funny story where JBL, you should probably just go listen to it. It's funny listening to Miz tell the story, but the night they won their first tag team titles on SmackDown, they went to the back. They're flying high, right? They just won the championships. And they get chewed out by JBL. Not even pulled aside or anything, in front of everybody. Chewed out by JBL. For what? Well, it was during this period that WWE had the ECW brand going. CM Punk, I think CM Punk may have been the ECW champion. Anyway, there was a segment that was taped earlier. They were told go out and do a promo. They did a promo on CM Punk. They tore into CM Punk. Apparently JBL thought this was disrespectful. They were just doing what they were told. And it caused this whole big scene, and Morrison almost went off, or he did go off on JBL. Oh, how I wish I could have been there to see that. So it was cool to hear them, interacting back and forth. I talked about Morrison last week. I said I think he should end up on the Smackdown brand, and if he does, you can do like a short-lived, M&M reunion between Miz and Morrison if you want to, and let him bring back the dirt sheet. It wouldn't be like a long-term thing. I wouldn't mind seeing the two of them interacting again on TV. I mean, what else? After this whole storyline plays out here, what else is Miz going to do? It's as good as any other idea they'll probably come up with for Morrison. It's better than him going around doing parkour in the halls, challenging for the 24/7 title. Anyway, back to Wyatt and Miz in his new home, being interviewed by Renee. So the interview is over. All of a sudden, we hear Maurice calling for her husband. She's shrieking in the background. And Miz rushes over, what's wrong? And they take a look at the baby monitor for their older daughter, Monroe Sky. And we see Monroe in her crib playing with the different puppets from the Firefly Funhouse. We see her in there with Ramblin' Rabbit. And then we see a shot of Huskus and Mercy the Buzzard and Abby the Witch. And they're all in the baby's crib. And she's having the time of her life. So they race upstairs in this like mansion now that they live in. The camera guy is following them. This was the best part. So they race upstairs, and Miz is there first. He gets to the bedroom door, but he stops short. He stops short of entering his child's bedroom. If that were me, I'd be pulling the door off the hinges. I'd be what's the guy from UFC? Rampage. Right, that shot from The Ultimate Fighter years ago, Rampage Jackson getting angry and punching a hole, ripping the door off the hinges. If that's my kid in there, and I think they're in trouble, I'm ripping that door off the hinges. Miz stops, and he does what any good husband would do. He lets his wife enter the room first. This was the best part. This is the funniest part of the whole segment. A profile in courage is the Miz. So they go inside, and ultimately, they obviously take her out of the crib, but they find this creepy fiend doll, basically a female fiend doll, in the crib. And of course, that's only going to get the Liv Morgan rumors churning even more. This after they finally, on Monday night, aired a vignette promoting the upcoming return of Liv Morgan. They're promoting it as the makeover of Liv Morgan. Maybe that makeover involves fiend makeup. Who knows? I'm guessing not, since she's on Raw and Bray's on Smackdown, but you gotta keep hope alive, I guess. Or alive. You'll soon be able to buy this doll, by the way, I'm sure, on WWE Shop for the low price of just $4,000. Bathed in the bathwater of Tom Savini. That's why it's so expensive. Miz's daughter, I have to give her props too. Miz's daughter did a hell of a job here. Hell of an acting job. The way she was reacting and pointing to the doll at just the right moment. Now, of course, I don't know how many takes it took to get that shot. It's not like Mr. Perfect here, who I'm sure back in the day, when he bowled a perfect strike and he golfed a hole-in-one and threw his football and ran down the field and caught his own football pass. I'm sure that was all done in one take. She's no Mr. Perfect, but however many shots it took, I thought she did a hell of a job here. She's already a better actress than Lana. She's 5 years old. If that, I don't even know if she's 5 years old. So this is going to be our first time seeing the new Bray Wyatt in action without the Fiend mask, which means that he is not invincible, the same way that the Fiend has been booked to be this unstoppable, invincible force. That plus the fact that it's not for the championship tells me that I think Miz picks up the win. And the Miz picks up the win with the unlikely assist from Daniel Bryan, who we have not seen since that episode of SmackDown, 2 weeks ago it was now, 3 weeks ago, where he got dragged to hell underneath the ring and we saw the hair was flying all over the place. We don't know what he looks like. Does he have hair on his face? Does he have hair on his head? Does he have hair on his balls? I don't know. I don't want to know. But we haven't seen him since. Nobody has seen Daniel Bryan since. We have no idea what he looks like. He may show up and look exactly the same. I said this on the podcast on Sunday. Maybe Bray was reaching down, thinking it was his hair, and maybe it was a stray cat who got underneath the ring and he was ripping hair out of the cat. Who knows? We don't know. Nobody has seen Bryan. I think he'll reemerge on Sunday and give the assist to The Miz so The Miz picks up a win. And if that's how it works, it's not the end of the world. Like, I wouldn't do that to The Fiend. I would not beat The Fiend at all for a while. But I wouldn't do some weird finish like that with The Fiend. But if it's Mr. Rogers Wyatt, I can understand that if it plays into the storyline. And I am still pulling for Muscle Man Bray. I don't want Mr. Rogers Wyatt in the red sweater shirt. I want Muscle Man Bray to the Muscle Man music coming down to the ring on Sunday. That's what I want. With the sweats and the headband and everything. And do the Muscle Man dance. So I think Miz wins. He's my prediction. I think Bryan is going to show up. And we'll see what he looks like then. Because look, Bryan hates The Miz. And that's part of what I like about this storyline. You have this three-way dynamic going on here where Miz kind of injected himself into the storyline a while ago. And we saw him and Bryan arguing back and forth. They don't like each other. They have a history that goes back many, many years. They've made it very clear. I don't like you, you don't like me. Even though he doesn't like The Miz, he hates The Fiend even more. So Bryan helps Miz beat Bray. That then leads to Daniel Bryan against The Fiend one more time for the Universal Championship at the Royal Rumble. That's why I had no problem with them keeping Bryan off the show, or at least keeping the rematch off this show. Why rush into it? Nobody even knew there was a pay-per-view this weekend until a few days ago. You don't have to rush into another Bryan Fiend match. You probably only got one more left anyway. Save it for the Rumble. Save it for the Royal Rumble. And I'll tell you what, I could even see that not being a singles match. I could see that being a triple threat match. If Miz wins this match here, he can stake his claim to wanting a shot at the Universal Championship. It actually makes the story more interesting, I think, if he wins. And you can have a triple threat at the Royal Rumble with Bryan, Miz, and The Fiend. And then at the Rumble, The Fiend can retain the title, which he should, without having to beat Bryan again. Bryan doesn't have to... Bryan can't be losing all the time. He's got to keep some credibility. So you could do a triple threat, and instead of beating Bryan, The Fiend can beat Miz. And then we have Roman Reigns, the big dog, taking on King Corbin in a tables, ladders, and dog food match. You all saw the dog food segment. Well, I mean, we can go back even further. You saw the guy in the dog costume. I'm still waiting for that payoff, by the way. Who was it? Was it Corey Graves? Yeah, no surprise there. Corey Graves on his little podcast a few weeks ago when he was talking about the dog costume. Everyone's impatient. Clearly this is headed for a payoff where Roman will get his hands on the guy in the dog costume. Have we seen the guy in the dog costume since then? Because I sure haven't. Maybe he'll show up on Sunday. But we go from the dog costume to the dog food. Now, when I did the podcast on Sunday and I talked about this, I said that I actually thought up until the point where the Alpo cans came out, when they cuffed him to the post and they were beating him down, that was great heat. They were getting good heat on Roman Reigns. And the right reaction from the crowd, you get sympathy for Roman Reigns, but they just couldn't help themselves, and they had to do the dog food stage, the big dog. So we got to go, what dog-related items can we come up with here? I know, we'll go with cans of dog food, because he's the big dog. And we'll rub dog food or shit or whatever it was all over him. And that'll get even more sympathy for Roman Reigns. I could have done without the stupid dog food. So they promoted this entire show tonight on Smackdown around, it's the big dog, what was it, Unleashed or something? Whatever the word was that they use, Unchained. It was the big dog Unchained. Well, apparently the big dog was stuck in traffic because he didn't bother showing up until the last 5 minutes of the show. Corbin was out there with Dolph Ziggler in the opening segment. They showed replays of what they did to Roman. They were in the building all day, and they kept showing us in the back that all of Corbin's security personnel were being taken out by a mystery assailant. Apparently Roman is very meticulous. Even though he was unchained, he was very restrained for these 2 hours of SmackDown, or at least the first 1 hour and 55 minutes of SmackDown tonight. Came out at just the right moment, after the New Day was getting their asses kicked. And you know what? I will actually say that makes sense. You know why that makes sense? When we saw the New Day being beaten down, we saw Kofi Kingston getting cuffed to the ring post. You know why? Because nobody lifted a damn finger to help Roman Reigns on SmackDown last week. So you know what? If I'm Roman Reigns, you know what? I'm letting these guys get their asses kicked. Kofi Kingston comes out at the beginning of the show and says to Corb, takes the high road. I don't like what you did to Roman Reigns last week. That was disrespectful. Oh, really? Mr. Kofi Kingston. And where the fuck were you? Well, this guy was handcuffed to a post getting dog food rubbed all over his body. Huh? I didn't see you come out to lift a finger to help him. So I actually think that makes sense. If I were Roman, I'd sit back and let them get their asses kicked too. But he came out and he beat everybody up. They brought a ladder out. Dolph Ziggler climbed to the top of the ladder, and of course he's there to take the big bumps. And so Roman threw him off the top of the ladder. He took a bump through the table, ended right on his hip too. That looked like it sucked. Corbin snuck away, and they'll save the payoff for Sunday when Roman Reigns wins the TLC match and defeats King Corbin. I think this little feud is going to continue on until the Royal Rumble. This will, continue on in some form or fashion right up until the Rumble match. Maybe Roman will even eliminate Corbin from the Rumble. I don't think it ends this Sunday. But I do think after, what happened to Roman a couple of weeks ago, whatever you think of Roman Reigns, you may not be a Roman Reigns fan, but the only outcome here that makes sense is Roman getting a win over King Corbin, getting his revenge, probably rubbing dog food all over him. Oh, I can't wait. I'm waiting with bated breath. So those are your predictions for TLC on Sunday. No Seth Rollins, no Kevin Owens, who they did an injury angle with on Monday night, with Rollins curb stomping him face first onto the concrete. So I guess it would be too soon to do the match, but they do injury angles all the time these days, and guys are back a week later. So it's not like any of that even matters. Years ago, it's a very different time. I'm not even going to say better or worse. It was just a very different time when you would do any kind of big injury angle. Guys would be gone for at least a few weeks to really sell it, and that just doesn't happen anymore. Occasionally it does. If someone's legitimately hurt, or they're going to film a movie, then yeah, they'll disappear for months at a time. But rarely does anybody sell anything anymore when it comes to these big injury angles. But this guy got curb stomped on the concrete in the parking garage. So I would not expect to see him, obviously not having a match on Sunday. No Randy Orton either against AJ Styles, which is obviously the direction they're going in on Raw. And look, no reason to rush any of these matches either. I said this about Bryan and The Fiend. Why rush it? It's TLC. This company didn't give two shits about this show a week ago. You got the Royal Rumble coming up. That's what matters. We all know all roads lead to the Rumble. Join me live here on the YouTube channel Sunday night as soon as the TLC pay-per-view goes off the air. I will be live on YouTube for my live stream review, and of course, episode 630 of the Solomonster Sounds Off full podcast hits all the usual major podcast platforms on Sunday. So I will see you guys back here this weekend, hopefully feeling a little bit better than I feel now. I'm on the mend. I've been sick as a dog all week. I've been sick since the last podcast I did. So just in time for this weekend and more shows. So I'll see you for 6:30 on Sunday, and then the pay-per-view stream here on YouTube on Sunday night. Take care, guys.